At approximately 7 in the evening on 8th May 1987, a backhoe loader moved slowly north along the Loughgall Road in County Armagh. A blue Toyota HiAce van followed close behind. The men inside were armed, dressed in blue boiler suits, wearing balaclavas and surgical gloves. In the digger's front bucket, an oil drum packed with somewhere between 200 and 400 pounds of explosive — sources disagree on the exact figure, and the disagreement has never been resolved — was wired to two 40-second fuses. The convoy slowed as the RUC station came into view on the right. A low building behind a light wire perimeter fence. A part-time post staffed by 3 local constables, scheduled to close at 7 that evening. They drove past, turned around, drove past again. On that second slow pass, members of the unit noticed that the station was unusually quiet. Not the ordinary quiet of a rural post that had shut for the night. Something else. Something wrong. They debated whether to proceed. Patrick Kelly, the East Tyrone Brigade's officer commanding, riding in the passenger seat of the van, made the decision to go in. They were right. The building was too quiet because 24 soldiers and 3 RUC officers had been positioned inside and around it since before dawn. The most asked question about Loughgall has always been who informed on the operation. The more answerable question is different. Why did men who spotted the trap proceed? The answer has less to do with betrayal than with a doctrine that had worked twice, an operation already too deep in motion to stop cleanly, and a method that had made them legible without their knowing it. Start with what was already committed before anyone said a word on that road. At 2:30 that afternoon, 2 hooded men had approached Peter Corr at the snooker club on Mountjoy Road in Dungannon, County Tyrone. Corr was the driver of a blue Toyota HiAce van, registration GJI 4417, belonging to his employer, Colm McGrath. The men took the van. Before they left, they told Corr not to report it missing to the police for 4 hours. Corr phoned McGrath immediately. The 4-hour instruction is specific and deliberate. It gave the unit a window. Long enough to assemble the bomb, move the digger, execute the attack, and be gone before a stolen vehicle report generated a checkpoint response. It also means that from 2:30 in the afternoon, the clock on the operation's secrecy was already running. The departure point, a hijacked van, traceable to a specific address in Dungannon, eventually reported by the victim, was in the system before the unit reached their target. The Mackle family were at Aginlig Upper, near Moy. The factual summary in the European Court of Human Rights judgment, Kelly and others, v. the United Kingdom, sets out what happened. At approximately 6 in the evening, 3 armed men, who identified themselves as IRA, arrived at the house. They said they wanted to borrow the digger. Between approximately 6 in the evening and 6:45, the bomb was prepared and placed in the digger's bucket. The digger was then driven out of the yard. 2 armed men remained at the house with the family. Their function was to prevent any contact with police until the operation was complete. At 7:10, approximately when the digger was making its approach to Loughgall, they left. The family tried to contact police but were unable to do so. 2 of the sons went on foot in the dark to find a patrol. By the time they found one, it was over. One further logistical element appears in reporting from a 2017 Irish news interview about the operation. That to avoid vehicle checkpoints, the bomb may have been transported part of the way by boat across Lough Neagh, from Ardbow to Maghery. The detail appears in one journalistic account and not in the ECHR judgment or the main official proceedings, so it sits at the edge of what the record confirms rather than at its centre. What the record does confirm The architecture of commitment that existed before the convoy made its first pass of Loughgall station. A stolen van, traceable to a Dungannon snooker club since 2:30 that afternoon. The theft already reported into the RUC system. A hijacked digger driven from a civilian farm at 6:50. A live bomb in a bucket. 8 armed volunteers in position. A family who had seen the men, whose sons were already on foot. The operation's secrecy had a time clock running on it before the unit reached Loughgall. Every minute the unit spent deliberating in the road was a minute in which the threads behind them were getting harder to contain. Turning back wasn't a simple choice. It meant dispersing personnel and a stolen vehicle through an environment where a hijacking report was already in the system. It meant moving a live wired bomb. It meant accounting for the family at the farm who had seen armed men and who were, though the unit couldn't have known it precisely, already trying to reach police. The cost of stopping was real, immediate, and compounding with time. To understand why the unit had committed that deeply in the first place, you need to understand what had happened at Ballygawley in December 1985 and at the Birches 9 months later. 7th December 1985. Ballygawley, County Tyrone. The East Tyrone Brigade attacked the RUC station as officers were preparing for a shift handover at approximately 6:55 in the evening. 2 officers were shot dead at the station gate at close range. Reserve Constable William Clements and Constable George Gilliland. The building was raked with automatic fire. A bomb was placed inside the station by the assault team and detonated minutes later, destroying the building and bringing down power cables across the town. 3 additional officers were wounded. One technical detail matters here because the argument depends on it. Some later secondary accounts describe the Ballygawley attack as having used a mechanical digger to deliver the bomb. Contemporary press reports, Kane chronology records, and the principal secondary histories consistently describe the bomb as carried into the station building by the assault team on foot. There was no excavator at Ballygawley. The digger innovation came with the next operation. Conflating the two methods blurs a distinction the strategic argument requires. The Ballygawley station was subsequently rebuilt by Royal Engineers in 1986. One element of the doctrine, preventing rebuilding, had not held. But the core outcome was undeniable. 2 officers killed, station destroyed, operation executed and exited cleanly. The unit had walked in, done what they came to do, and walked out. That was the first data point. 11th August 1986. The Birches, County Armagh. 9 months after Ballygawley, the brigade attacked the part-time RUC base at the Birches near Portadown. The station was unmanned that evening. A JCB digger was hijacked, along with other vehicles, in the Washing Bay and Ardbow area near Lough Neagh. Then something new entered the method. The digger's front bucket was loaded with approximately 200 pounds of explosive. The machine was then driven directly through the station's high-wire perimeter fence, a fence built to deflect grenades and mortar fire, not designed to stop a loaded excavator at speed. An IRA covering team raked the empty building with automatic weapons fire simultaneously. A volunteer lit the fuse. The team withdrew to a waiting van before detonation. The bomb detonated and destroyed the station. Afterward, according to RTE broadcast coverage from the period and subsequent operational accounts, the unit escaped by boat across Lough Neagh, avoiding the roadblocks that went up behind them. The station was unmanned, so no officers were killed. That was noted in contemporary reporting. But measured against the doctrine's actual objectives, the Birches was more complete than Ballygawley. A British parliamentary written answer in April 1988 listed damaged RUC stations and their reinstatement status. Ballygawley, yes, rebuilt. The Birches, no reinstatement. As of that date, the police authority had not decided on reconstruction. Both elements of the doctrine had now been demonstrated. Station destroyed, achieved, twice. Prevention of rebuilding, achieved, once and holding. The digger-mounted bomb, the perimeter breach, the covering team firing simultaneously, the withdrawal before detonation, the full sequence had been executed and confirmed in the field. The Birches also established something that Mark Urban documents in Big Boys Rules from the intelligence side. After August 1986, a stolen JCB operating near an RUC station in East Tyrone had become a specific, recognizable trigger. British forces knew what that combination of elements meant. A report of a stolen digger in East Tyrone heading toward a rural station wasn't, after August 1986, an ambiguous signal. The method had publicized itself. One success with a method is a weapon. Two successes with the same method in under a year is a signature. By August 1986, the East Tyrone Brigade had a proven, repeatable tactical template, tested at Ballygawley, perfected at the Birches, demonstrated twice against British security infrastructure in the same region by the same unit. The confidence that took the van and the digger to Loughgall 9 months later wasn't bravado. It was built on two data points that had confirmed the method from first principles. It was also, by then, the most dangerous thing they had. The doctrine behind the three-attack campaign had been shaped primarily by two men working in tandem. Patrick Kelly had become the brigade's officer commanding in 1985, a respected commander from Kappa, County Tyrone, who had risen through the ranks and served as a bridge between local units and the IRA's general headquarters. Jim Liner, who served simultaneously as a Sinn Féin councillor for Monaghan Urban District Council, had joined the IRA in the early 1970s, survived a premature bomb explosion in December 1973, and spent 5 years in the Maze prison before returning to active service. Mark Urban's 1992 account, Big Boys Rules, places Liner at the operational centre of the brigade's campaign. Richard English, in Armed Struggle, identifies the same tradition within the East Tyrone unit. During his sentence, Liner had studied Maoist guerrilla theory, the political conditions for armed struggle, the construction of bases of support, the logic of the liberated zone. His strategic ambition, as attributed through Republican contemporaries and a 2024 academic study drawing on interviews with Republican participants, was specific. Destroy isolated rural RUC stations, prevent their repair through intimidation of contractors and local communities, and gradually clear British state presence from corridors of East Tyrone and North Armagh. Not a random campaign of attrition, but a territorial project, a sequence of operations designed to make rural policing untenable, one building at a time. Padraig McKerney shared and extended that framework. A veteran of the 1983 Maze prison escape, he had returned to active service and participated in operational planning. Republican accounts describe him bringing tactical coherence and discipline to Liner's strategic vision. Their collaboration had begun formally around 1984. No surviving direct quote from Liner stating the doctrine exists in the public record. What survives is the operational sequence it produced. 2 attacks in 18 months, both succeeding, both targeting the same class of objective. Isolated, part-time rural RUC stations, with increasing technical sophistication. Ballygawley was gun and bomb, direct assault, success. The Birches was digger bomb, perimeter breach, success with the station not rebuilt. The refinement is visible in the chronology. Kelly was the operational commander. Liner was the strategist and a participant. His body, the fifth described in the ECHR judgment, was found lying diagonally across the interior of the van, feet toward the rear door, with debris on the body indicating he had been on the floor before the explosion. Multiple bullet and fragment injuries. Alongside him in the rear of the van were Padraig McKerney and Seamus Donnelly. Eugene Kelly drove. Patrick Kelly had been in the passenger seat. The three attacks, Ballygawley, the Birches, Loughgall, weren't coincidental. They were a campaign, a method being developed, refined, and deployed in sequence toward a strategic objective that had theoretical coherence and operational validation behind it. By May 1987, the method was at its most complete expression. It was also at its most exposed. A tactical pattern demonstrated twice by the same unit in the same operational geography, against the same category of target, using the same equipment, does not stay invisible. Each successful repetition does not just confirm the method's validity to the people executing it, it also provides the opposing intelligence architecture with a progressively cleaner picture of what to watch for. After Ballygawley, British security forces had seen a gun and bomb assault on an isolated rural RUC station by the East Tyrone Brigade succeed. After the Birches, they had seen a digger-mounted bomb assault succeed by the same brigade in the same region. Urban documents this awareness in Big Boys Rules, a report of a stolen JCB in East Tyrone in May 1987 triggered alarm specifically because of the Birches precedent. The method wasn't just known, it had been catalogued. After August 1986, a stolen digger moving toward a rural RUC station in East Tyrone was a named and recognizable indicator. What did British forces know before the attack on 8 May 1987? The ECHR factual summary is precise on the pre-positioning. Following a briefing that a terrorist attack on Loughgall station was likely, 24 soldiers and 3 RUC officers arrived at the station in the early hours of 8 May 1987 under the command of the officer identified in proceedings only as Soldier A. 6 soldiers in plain clothes positioned themselves inside the station. Another 18 in uniform were hidden in 5 locations in wooded areas surrounding the building, armed with M16 and Heckler & Koch G3 rifles and 2 L7A2 general-purpose machine guns. All of this was in place before dawn, before any hijacking, before any movement by the unit. The Historical Inquiries team, in its December 2011 findings, concluded that security forces had received intelligence in the days before the attack. That finding is consistent with an informer, with signals intelligence, with pattern-based surveillance of a twice-demonstrated method, or with some combination of all three. The HET didn't specify the source. The full report has never been made publicly available. The ECHR judgment in Kelly and others vs. the United Kingdom, application number 30054/96, delivered its findings in May 2001. The court found a procedural violation. The investigation into the deaths had been inadequate and insufficiently independent. It didn't find a substantive violation of Article 2. It didn't rule the use of lethal force unlawful. It made no ruling on the intelligence source. Whether an informer was inside or close to the unit, whether signals intelligence was the primary basis, whether pattern-based surveillance of a twice-demonstrated method was sufficient on its own, these remain officially unacknowledged nearly 4 decades later. The precise source of British foreknowledge is genuinely contested, and the public record does not resolve it. The channel has examined that specific question in detail in previous work. What the analytical record does establish, independent of that question, an intelligence architecture watching for the digger bomb method, trained on the Birches, didn't necessarily need a name or a date. it needed the method. The method had been demonstrated twice in 17 months, and a report of a stolen JCB in East Tyrone in the days before the attack was consistent with every operational element the brigade had introduced at the Birches. Whether there was also an informer is a separate question from whether the method itself was sufficient to justify pre-positioning at Loughgall. The unit may not have needed to be betrayed. They may have needed only to have been consistent. The ECHR judgment records what the soldiers inside and around the station observed. They reported a number of sightings of the blue HiAce van passing in front of the RUC station in both directions. From concealed positions in the wooded areas on the south side of the Loughgall Road and from inside the building, they watched the convoy approach, pass, turn around and pass again. From those positions, the soldiers could see the approach and remain invisible. The unit, driving slowly past the front of the station, could only see the outside of a building. What the outside showed them was nothing. The station had closed at 7, as scheduled. 3 constables and 6 plainclothes SAS soldiers were inside. 18 more soldiers were hidden in the trees. Not a single RUC vehicle leaving. Not a light going off. Not an officer pulling a gate shut and walking to a car. Not the residue of recent human occupation that a closed building tends to leave behind. The particular quality of absence that has texture to it. The atmosphere of a place that has recently held people and recently released them. Loughgall that evening had none of it. The building wasn't just closed, it was still in a way that wouldn't be ordinary. These were experienced operators. Patrick Kelly had commanded the brigade since 1985. Jim Liner had been running IRA operations since the late 1970s. Padraig McKerney was a veteran of the 1983 Maze escape who had spent years on active service and participated in operational planning for multiple attacks. These were men who had stood outside 2 other police stations and executed complex operations against them. They knew what a closed rural post looked like at the end of a working day. A light off, a curtain drawn, a vehicle gone, some small residue of the ordinary occupation that had just ended. The kind of institutional quiet that comes from a place that has stopped rather than a place that is holding its breath. Loughgall was holding its breath. Journalist Peter Taylor, in his account corroborated by the ECHR judgment's sequence of events and published in his 1997 book Provos, the IRA and Sinn Féin, describes the van completing its 2 slow passes and notes that members of the unit felt that something was amiss and debated whether to continue but decided to go ahead. Tim Pat Coogan's account in The Troubles, Ireland's Ordeal, 1966 to 1995, drawing on survivor testimony, records that minutes ticked by as some team members argued in favour of aborting the mission, while others favoured going ahead. Kelly made the decision to proceed. In Coogan's account, the call was to go in and blow the barracks up and fire a few rounds. In the scout cars parked further down the road, out of the station's line of sight, one of the 3 men who survived the evening had already reached his own conclusion. He spotted an SAS helicopter in the distance. "There's something badly wrong here," he told a comrade, as survivor testimony in the same reconstruction records. The digger was already moving by then. Here, the record stops. No volunteer who was inside the van that evening has given a direct public account of what was argued, who said what, or for how long the debate ran. Republican coverage of the ambush, and Phoblacht's May 1987 issue, retrospective accounts in Republican News in 2019, treats the operation without reference to pre-attack hesitation. Materials from the Loughgall Truth and Justice campaign and the Pat Finucane Centre focus on the shoot-to-kill question and the inadequacy of official investigations. None of the accessible testimony from within the unit documents the content of the exchange. That absence should be named plainly rather than papered over. The debate is documented in secondary accounts drawing on survivor testimony. What was said, by whom, and for precisely how long, isn't available from any primary source in the public record. This is a story for which we have the outline, but not the interior. What the confirmed facts allow is a reconstruction of the pressure bearing down on every option in that moment. A stolen van report was in the system. The digger had left the Mackle farm at 6:50. The two remaining armed men had left the family at 7:10, and since that point, the family had been trying to contact police, while two of the sons were already on foot looking for a patrol. Nobody on the road outside Loughgall station knew the exact status of those threads, but they existed, and they were moving independently of anything the unit could control. There was also the simpler operational arithmetic of standing still. A stolen vehicle, a live bomb, 8 armed men in boiler suits and balaclavas, stationary on a rural road in County Armagh at 7 in the evening. Every additional minute spent in debate was a minute of additional exposure with no corresponding reduction in the danger being debated. And there was this. Abandoning the operation meant not just leaving the road, but walking away from the strategic framework that had been built across 2 years, tested at Ballygawley, confirmed at the Birches, and brought to its fullest expression at this building, at this moment. Not merely a tactical abort, a repudiation of the method the unit had staked everything on. The doubt standing in the road against that evidence was a feeling, an observation, a silence where there should have been ordinary occupation. It was real, but it was going up against 18 months of data pointing the other way. According to Peter Taylor's account, corroborated by the ECHR judgment sequence of events, Kelly jumped from the passenger seat and immediately opened fire on the building as the van stopped short of the station. Taylor notes this may have been done to encourage the rest of the unit to resolve the dispute about proceeding, or possibly because it was the way previous attacks had begun. Both may be true simultaneously. A commander who fires first does not eliminate the debate. He decides it. Declan Arthurs drove the digger toward the station. Tony Gormley and Gerard O'Callaghan rode alongside, armed, wearing gloves, lighter in hand, in Taylor's account, literally riding shotgun. The fuses were lit. The van followed. The exchange that followed lasted approximately 10 minutes. 600 spent British cartridge casings were recovered from the scene. The Toyota HiAce had approximately 125 bullet holes in its bodywork. The May 1995 inquest was explicit on cause of death for all 9 who died at Loughgall. Serious and multiple gunshot wounds, not the explosion. The bomb detonated and destroyed a large part of the station, seriously injuring 2 of the RUC constables inside, but the 9 dead died from gunfire. 3 men in the scout cars passed through the British Army and RUC checkpoints that went up after the ambush. The road had not been sealed during the operation. Closing it might have warned the IRA that something was in position, and that was the decision that kept it open. Anthony Hughes was 36 years old, from Caledon, County Tyrone. Married with 3 children. He was driving his brother Oliver home after the 2 of them had spent the day repairing a lorry. Both men wore the blue work coveralls they had worked in all day. Their white Citroën GS came along the Loughgall Road from behind the van, approaching the station from the same direction. Soldiers opened fire on the car. Anthony Hughes died at the wheel. Oliver Hughes was shot multiple times and seriously wounded, but survived. In March 2014, the Ministry of Defence formally apologised to the Hughes family, confirming that Anthony Hughes had been wholly innocent of any wrongdoing. His widow had settled with the MOD out of court in April 1991. The large-scale set-piece assault on isolated rural RUC stations didn't happen again after Loughgall. The pattern ends cleanly in the operational record on 8th of May 1987. Between December 1985 and May 1987, 3 attacks, each a variation of the same tactical architecture, each escalating the method's ambition and technical completeness. Ballygawley used direct infantry assault with a bomb carried in by hand. The Birches introduced the digger as a delivery vehicle to breach a reinforced perimeter, requiring no personnel inside the fence to detonate. Loughgall was the fullest expression of the method, an 8-man unit in 2 vehicles, a fully evolved delivery system, an oil drum in a bucket, 2 40-second fuses. After May 1987, the template disappeared. In January 1992, the East Tyrone Brigade detonated a concealed roadside bomb at T-Bane Crossroads near Cookstown, killing 8 Protestant building workers returning from a contract job. No digger, no perimeter breach, no advance approach visible from distance. In February 1992, the brigade attacked Coal Island RUC station using a lorry mounted with a heavy machine gun. Again, no construction equipment, no staged hijacking sequence, no oil drum in a bucket. Both were lethal operations. Neither used the format that had destroyed Ballygawley and the Birches. What shifted between 1987 and 1992 in operational terms was the direction of movement, from visibility toward concealment. The digger bomb method required acquiring and hijacking large, recognizable industrial equipment, moving it on public roads, staging it against a fence in view of anyone near the building, and lighting a fuse before withdrawal. Every step of that sequence was observable from outside. The hijacking of a JCB near Lough Neagh, the preparation at a civilian farm, the convoy on a rural road. After August 1986, a stolen digger in East Tyrone had become not just a piece of stolen equipment, but a specific operational signal, one that British intelligence had catalogued and was actively watching for. No IRA Army Council assessment of Loughgall has entered the public domain. The shift from set-piece assault to concealment first is read from what stopped occurring, not from any document announcing the change. But the inference from the operational record is hard to avoid. The method that had made the East Tyrone Brigade its most formidable required a kind of visibility to execute that made it possible to prepare against. Each time the method was used, it advertised itself more clearly. After 2 demonstrations, it had become a checklist, and by the early hours of 8th of May 1987, someone had run through that checklist and positioned soldiers along every point on it. They were right. That is the hardest part. The building was too quiet, and the reason it was too quiet was that it was full of soldiers who had been waiting since before dawn for exactly this approach. The unit's own eyes in the last minutes before the attack began told them the truth. They went in anyway. Not from recklessness and not from ignorance. They went in because the method had confirmed itself at Ballygawley in December 1985 and at the Birches in August 1986, and there was rational, evidence-based reason to believe it would function again. They went in because a stolen van, a live bomb, a hijacked digger and a family at a farm were already committed, and the cost of stopping was real and compounding. They went in because standing in a road with a stolen vehicle and a live wired bomb, arguing about whether to proceed, is itself an exposure that does not resolve through more argument. And they went in because the thing that had made them formidable, a replicable, proven, demonstrably effective method, was exactly the same thing that had made them readable. They had a method. The method had announced itself twice in the 17 months before 8 May 1987. Somebody had been reading it since Ballygawley.